is on. So I think we're ready to begin. Somebody needs to mute because we're getting background noise. So if you're not speaking, everybody should be muted, and I will do the same once I'm off. All right, so welcome to the November 19th, 2020 meeting of the New York City Campaign Finance Board. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes from the September 17th meeting. I'll move the approval of the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. The next item of business is the report of the chair. And so here goes. Welcome to our meeting today. During the 2020 general held earlier this month, the board paid more than $940,000 in matching funds to candidates for the other presidential race on the ballot. All three candidates on the ballot for Queensborough president received public financing based on small contributions that they raised from New York City residents. While we may be done with the 2020 elections as scheduled, 2020 is not yet done with us. We are preparing for the special election in City Council District 12 that will be held on December 22. Today, there are 7 candidates registered for this race. The first campaign finance filing is due tomorrow, the 20th. The first public funds payment is scheduled for November 30th. We are also looking ahead to multiple special elections early in 2021. Council District 24 set for February 2nd. We have 8 candidates registered for the district, and the first campaign finance filing is due on January 4th.
Rick, you're breaking up. Chair Schaefer, sorry, you're breaking up for 1 minute.
The 2021 elections are coming into sharp review. The board will be issuing on December 15th. This will be the earliest public funds payment in program history. We are also on pace to have a historic number of candidates. As of last week, 365 candidates have registered with the CFB. That includes more than 20 candidates for mayor, more than 300 city council candidates. Since the city went on pause in March, CFB staff have conducted 36 online training sessions with 716 attendees. That's a remarkable number, and it demonstrates the very high level of interest in running for office and in the 2021 elections generally. For all of these elections, the CFB will help candidates understand and succeed in the public financing program, make public funds payments, and help voters learn about the candidates and cast their vote. I will now turn to Naomi Zouderer for a report on the CFB.
Thank you, Chair Schaefer. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm pleased to report that New Yorkers turned out in huge numbers in the 2020 general election. More than 1.1 million voters came out during early voting. Another 1.2 million cast ballots on election day. And last week, the Board of Elections began counting nearly 700,000 absentee ballots. CFB staff and the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee looks forward to analyzing the results of this election in detail over the coming months as we prepare our annual voter analysis report to be released in the spring of 2021. But first, we want to hear from the voters directly. We're now inviting New York City voters to attend and testify at our post-election hearing on December 9th. Whether you cast a ballot in person or by mail during early voting or on election day, we want to hear about your experience. Tell us what worked well and what can be improved for next time. RSVP to attend the hearing at nycvotes.nyccfb.info. That's all for me. So I will now turn it over to Daniel Cho.
Good morning. I'm Daniel Cho, Assistant Executive Director for Candidate Guidance and Policy, filling in this morning for Executive Director Amy Loprest. Thanks to Chair Schaefer and Voter Assistance Advisory Committee Chair Zauder for their updates. As the chair noted, preparations are underway by the staff to make the first pre-ballot payment under the new 8-to-1 campaign finance program on December 15th. Candidates who filed the past July 2020 disclosure statement filing have a deadline of Monday, November 23rd to demonstrate their eligibility for this first payment. Preparation for this historic payment has been a massive undertaking that has required the support of staff and other agencies from all across the CFB during this uniquely difficult year. On behalf of Amy and our colleagues on the executive team and the CFB staff, we want to extend our deepest thanks for everyone's efforts. Thank you, and to you, Chair Schaefer.
Thank you very much. We have 4 candidates scheduled to appear this morning. We'll hear from each of them, and then following that, we'll go into deliberations. The first candidate listed for this morning is Christopher Carew. Mr. Carew, are you with us?
Yes. Hold on, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and now I can see you. No, let's see. Where are you?
Now you can see me?
Yes, yes. And is do we have a staff member from the CFB present for this?
Yes, I'm here.
Good. So, Mr. Carew, the way we proceed is very simple. I'm going to ask CFB staff to basically summarize what the issue is before us. This is very brief, not really an argument, just a quick summary. I'll then turn the floor over to you, and you can make whatever arguments you deem appropriate. There may be some response from the CFB staff, maybe some questions from members of the board. And after a little bit of back and forth, we'll conclude. If you wish, at the end, I'll give you a little time to make a closing statement if you choose to. And so that's how we'll proceed. All right. Let's get started. Cameron, are you going to tee this up for us?
Sure. Good morning, Chair Schaefer, members of the board, and Mr. Cho. My name is Cameron Ferrante, and I'm Senior Associate Counsel for the Campaign Finance Board. Joining me today is Supervisory Senior Auditor Yasmin Castillo, and before the board is the matter of the Christopher Carey campaign in the 2017 elections for City Council. The candidate was a participant in the program, but did not receive public funds. CFB staff is recommending that the board find the campaign committed the following violations of the Act and board rules and assess penalties according to the 2017 penalty guidelines. Failing to provide bank statements, filing a late disclosure statement, failing to demonstrate compliance with reporting requirements for receipts, and failing to respond to the draft audit report. The campaign has not contested these recommended violations or penalty amounts. Thanks.
Can't hear you.
You're muted.
Muted.
I'm muted, yeah. Mr. Carew, the floor is now yours.
During the whole campaign, I was making all the deadlines and filing everything, but then after the campaign was over, I was speaking to my then contact. I can't remember the name off the top of the head because it was like 3 years ago, but I asked a couple times. This was like probably in 2018, like a year after, if I was like completed, and I was told the last time that I was up to date. I wasn't aware that I was going to be for the next year, 2 years, whatever, going to have to do anything else. And then I moved, and I never got anything in the mail after I moved. So I've got something notice, I guess, last year, whenever towards the end of last year about this, and so I was just wondering what that was. But by that time, I guess it was too late. I was just kind of surprised 2 years later that I was told I owed money after I thought I was completely absolved of all responsibilities, I guess, at that point. But that's it.
Mr. Ferrante, would you like to respond?
So I believe what Mr. Carew is talking about is a conversation he had with a CSU liaison shortly after his Disclosure Statement 16 filing, in which he asked whether he had completed the filing process. The liaison acknowledged that they had received Disclosure Statement 16, and I think there was some sort of miscommunication regarding whether that was the end of his actual obligations with the board at that point. However, during the campaign trainings and post-election trainings and communications, I think it's made pretty clear to candidates that there are ongoing obligations after Disclosure Statement 16 and after the election, including a description of the post-election audit and enforcement process. With respect to Mr. Carew moving, the board did not receive any written notice, and there's no record of us having received notice of him moving or changing his address after the election until I actually had some phone conversations and email exchanges with him in January 2020. And that was all after the draft audit report and the penalty notice had already gone out. So although Mr. Carew may have moved, the board did not have notice of it until much, much later in the process. And as the board is aware, campaign law is required to inform the campaign finance board of any changes to their address or information on their filer registration or certifications for, I think it's 6 years now after the date of the election. So that's I guess those are my responses to Mr. Carey's statement.
Mr. Ferrante, could you just comment for a moment? You said that there may have been some miscommunication.
Sorry, go ahead.
Can you just comment? You said there may have been some miscommunication with Mr. Carew back after his 2016 filing.
I just meant that there may have been a misinterpretation as to what the topic of conversation was, whether Mr. Carew was done with his Disclosure Statement 16 filing as opposed to done with the entire post-election audit and enforcement process.
I think Mr. Ferrante is giving Mr. Carew the benefit of the doubt, as we all do, that he is sincere in his belief as to what that conversation meant. It's just that the training and other materials should have alerted Mr. Carew to the fact that there was an audit after filing of closure statements. But Mr. Carew, I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond and see if there was anything further you'd like to add.
No, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Carew, Mr. Ferrante. And we'll move on to the next candidate, and that is Anthony Herbert, and who from the CFB staff will be addressing this?
I will.
Thank you. All right, so Mr. Herbert, you were here, I think, for my little introduction for Mr. Carew, so you understand the drill now. And so I'll ask Ms. Persky to begin by sort of teeing up the issue, and then I'll ask you to weigh in with whatever comments you have. All right, Ms. Persky?
Yes, good morning. I'm Bethany Persky, Deputy General Counsel for the CFB. This is a petition brought by Anthony Herbert's 2021 campaign pursuant to Board Rule 709, which allows campaigns to petition for review of a non-payment determination. This determination was that the campaign is ineligible to receive public funds due to a previous finding that the candidate's 2003 campaign was in breach of certification. Board Rule 301D2H, which provides that a campaign may be denied public funds if the candidate has been found by the board in the course of program participation to be in breach of certification.
All right. Mr. Herbert, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. You know, I'm here shaking because, you know, my very life of all the work that I've done over the course of the last couple of years and in evolving and maturing and understanding what the whole aspect of politics and representation of people is about. 2003 was tumultuous at best. I participated in a campaign where the city council member was killed in City Hall. Having suffered the allegedness that I participated in that initially was the start of the downfall of the whole campaign to me, as far as I was concerned. I then, in fact, entrusted people who I thought had my back, who was there to protect and to make sure that I was within confines of policies all across the board, to find out that they did not. They were rushing to make decisions, you know, for the most part, without me participating in it, because I was always told as a neophyte in that aspect of having worked for elected officials but never running before, that here it is, you know, you're the candidate, you go out there and you campaign. Your campaign is going to take care of everything. And I entrusted that, thinking that that was the case. And it was only until I found out that I was not going to receive matching funds after working hard to try to raise money, and then having come before the board at that time to hear the allegations that were against me, you know, it floored me, because I've never in my life ever wanted to put myself in a position to be disrespectful of anybody, to be corrupt, or even to be dishonest with anything that I do. And sadly enough, the only guilt that I suffer here is that I trusted people to do their job to help me to get to a position of being elected in the very community that I was born and raised in and have been working in since I was 14 years of age, trying to make it a better community. You know, and only to find out here in 2020, I'm still suffering and still paying for that. You know, I mean, and I understood, I was assessed a fine, and I recognized that, you know what, it was my campaign. And having understand that after, you know, doing research and over the course of the years, I came to grips and said, you know what, I'm going to pay for that fine. And I paid it. Not to find out that here again, the campaign is coming back to haunt me again, to be in a position to try to get out here and help the very people that I've been trying to help for a long time. So I come to the board recognizing, yes, I'm at fault for not actually doing what I was supposed to do, and understanding that I had to monitor the folks that I entrusted that had my back. So now I'm suffering from, you know, from their stupidity and their dishonesty. And at the same time, you know, at that time that this campaign took place, there was a lot of folks coming at my campaign because of the nature of the fact that Councilman Davis was killed, and it was in the media, and folks are coming in, I want to help, only to find out that the people that came to help were the very people that were there to sabotage it. They were there to destroy my petition so I couldn't get on the ballot. The very party that I thought had protected me in democracy turned their back on me and sent the people in to do what they did, to disrupt my whole structure. So I'm a victim of that stupidity, but I get it. It was my candidacy and I have to own up to it. But at the same time, why do I have to keep on repeating this now in another year when I've actually I think I've got my act together somewhat. I've got an accountant that's basically understands the dynamics. I've been forthright in the last campaign I ran in the special election. He's been providing the documentation necessary. We've done everything, I think, above board, and I've asked all the questions to ensure that he was doing the right thing to cover me. And the same thing going into 2021. So I come to the board asking, you know, how can I stop this from repeatedly being victimized and what have you for the stupidity of people in 2003 and my lack of understanding that I needed to trust people, and which I did, and then they turned around and screwed me up. So I come to you and ask, I mean, I'm more than willing to be that poster child to go and talk to other campaigns about what not to do and to talk about my experience and what happened. But at the same time, I didn't commit this act. These were individuals that were sent there to do it to me, and it keeps on coming back to hurt me. And that's where I'm at. And I've been in this community every single day of my life since then, out here trying to correct things, trying to save lives, dealing with gang and gun violence, and keeping above board and showing respect of the laws and never ever flouting. I've never been arrested. I've never done anything that caused me to have to go before a judge, with the exception of civil activity, to fight for others who were getting their rights violated. And here it is, I'm still being victimized for something that happened in 2003. I had no control of because I didn't understand what I needed to do. I didn't understand campaign finance, and I thought the people that I had did. So I come to you and ask for the opportunity to fairly get out here and run a campaign that's going to allow me to be competitive so I can change the dynamics of our community. And that's why I came before you today.
Thank you very much. Ms. Persky, would you like to respond?
Yeah, just a few things. And as Mr. Herbert acknowledged, the candidate is the face of the campaign. The candidate assumes accountability for everything that happens within the campaign, signs a certification attesting that they will be responsible for any penalties and public funds repayments and other consequences of the campaign. And we know that the board does not allow candidates to outsource that responsibility to third parties. I'd also note that the bar for breach of certification is very high. This is reserved for really the most serious substantial violations of the Act and the board rules. Not every campaign that commits fraud or misrepresentation is found in breach of certification. This is only 23 campaigns in the history of the program that have been found in breach. And finally, I just note that public funds are not a right. They are not guaranteed to any campaign. They are a privilege that need to be earned. And that's all that I'll say.
Mr. Herbert, could you, what is it, just give us a little background on you. What do you do? What is it that you do? You said talking about working in the community and just trying to get a little better sense.
Currently, I'm employed as the community relations specialist for IHI Power, which is the Ravenswood generating station in Long Island City. My responsibility is to go out and build confidence in the community. I was hired to do that a year ago, and I've gotten high marks. I'm also serving as the chair of the NAACP NYCHA branch's Civic Engagement Committee. So I work with people in public housing to ensure their civil rights are not violated. I also serve as the president of the citywide outreach chapter for the National Action Network in dealing directly with issues of civil rights violations in public housing for the National Action Network as well. Outside of that, I sit on a number of boards with the youth organizations, and since 14, that's all I've known is to be in the community and be of service, and that's all I've been able to do thus far. And that's all I know how to do, because that's what I believe in. And I'm never going to go out here to disrespect my family name or allow my kids to be disrespected because their father did something stupid intentionally. And that's not what I did.
On the same line or in the same subject, you mentioned experience in government, although not as a candidate before. What was that prior experience?
I was a former staffer to Congressman Ed Towns, a former staffer to City Councilwoman Priscilla Wooten, and I also served as a citywide engagement outreach coordinator for African American Affairs for the New York State Senate Democratic Caucus.
Thank you. One other question I had, your statements about people having acted without your knowledge, that argument I anticipated because you've made it before, but in your statement here today, you seem to suggest that this was kind of a setup, and that the people who were who had committed the acts of fraud back in 2003 were sent in for that purpose. Do you have any evidence of that, or is that just a feeling of yours?
The only thing I can bear to evidence is that I knew that John Whitehead was working on the campaign of my opponent at the time, which was on the Working Families line, Tish James, but also to find out that the person who came in and said he was going to help me with my petitions and help me to file my petitions where I couldn't be heard because I was charged with a fatal flaw was the then campaign treasurer for Tish James' campaign.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. I appreciate, Mr. Herbert, you're acknowledging that you do have personal responsibility to oversee those critical aspects and elements of your candidacy and your disclosure. We have a very important obligation to protect a vast amount of city taxpayer dollars. And you should know that more than one candidate has gone to prison over the last few decades for forged contribution cards. I don't know how we will come out on this question. You do seem sympathetic and sincere as a candidate, and so, you know, I think we feel that, but we do have a tremendous obligation. And as Ms. Persky pointed out, this is among the most serious, or even the most serious, transgressions of the rules and the law. If we, depending on how we come out, will you pledge to take personal responsibility to look at every single contribution card that you're campaigning?
Totally. I'll sit with that. You know, Anthony Moriello has been pretty good with me thus far. I have no problem doing that to ensure. And I'm actually encouraging people to go online and make their contributions. This makes it even easier because that documentation is right there. And that's kind of like what I've been doing thus far and in raising funds to go forward. You know, I want to also say that the individual that did forge those documentations, we got him to sign a letter saying that he was the one that did it. I didn't sign anything. He was the one that did it, and we made sure we brought him to bear because that was what he did was totally disrespectful to me as a person, in a disrespect to what we're supposed to be upholding. If we're going to run for office, we have to be held at a certain level.
Right, but as you admitted, you're responsible, and the disrespect that we're focused on is to the city and its taxpayers and its fisc.
Okay, any other questions? All right, if not, thank you very much, Mr. Herbert. We'll be considering your arguments in our deliberations in just a little while. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next candidate scheduled to appear is Nicole Maliatakis. Is there a representative from her campaign present? No one?
Is that person muted?
I don't see the campaign treasurer who I've been in touch with in the meeting. I sent him an invite, which he acknowledged yesterday, and I've reached out to him this morning, but he hasn't responded. So.
All right. Well, we'll see if that person appears at the end. We'll skip over Ms. Maliatakis for now and go directly to Mr. Valdez, who I see right in the center of my screen, and who is the staff person from the CFB who will be handling this?
That is also me.
Oh, Mr. Ferrante again. Okay. So, Mr. Ferrante, would you tee up the issue for us, please?
Sure. Good morning again. Cameron Ferrante, Senior Associate Counsel, and with me from audit today is Senior Auditor Victoria Telt. Before the board is a matter of the Delvis Valdez campaign in the 27 election for City Council District 38 in Brooklyn. The candidate was a participant in the program and received $89,076 in public funds. CFB staff is recommending that the board find the campaign committed the following violations of the Act and board rules, excuse me, according to the 2017 penalty guidelines. Failing to document transactions, accepting a contribution from a corporation, and failing to demonstrate that spending was in furtherance of the campaign. The campaign's contesting these recommended violations and associated penalties.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Valdez, the floor is yours.
You're muted, Mr. Valdez.
Mr. Valdez, you're muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Hello?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Chairman Schaefer and the board members for giving me an opportunity to respond to the allegation. Fourth, I'd just like to go over each one. I'll try to be quick and simple. The first one for failing to document transactions, I believe it was my campaign manager when we were in negotiations to contract him. It was close to my time to start the campaign. So we entered into an agreement of what I was going to pay him on a monthly basis between the start of the campaign up until I believe it was primary day, which was September. Prior to us signing the official agreement, we scheduled our campaign kickoff and he participated in that. And he did services for it, which were supposedly, according to him, over and above the retainer agreement, which was signed thereafter. And for that, he charged us a fee of $500. We were we failed to get an invoice for that. That was our fault on the campaign's part to get an invoice for those services, but he did provide those services. And subsequent to that, and responding to the campaign's inquiries and all that, we kind of cut off all communications with our campaign manager, quote unquote. I'll call him campaign manager because we had some rough discussions along the way. As you know very well, we were not successful in our campaign, so there was a lot of falling out between myself and the campaign manager, and there was no communication to thereafter get an invoice or an affidavit from him that he did charge us for those services. He did charge us, we paid him, but we don't have an invoice for it. The second of accepting a contribution from a corporation. I'm a first-time candidate with the CFB. I consider this to be an innocent situation in which we had a store owner who wanted to offer his premises for a quote-unquote house party. It's on my understanding that house parties, if they're under $500, don't require reporting of much kind. He rents an apartment which was too small to host the house party, quote unquote house party. So he offered up his place of business, which he rents under his individual name. We provided an affidavit to the campaign that he rents this premises under his individual name. However, he has a DBA that is a DBA for a business, a dance business. And according to the CFB, they're stating that it was a business and it was not a house event. It doesn't qualify for that. My argument is that we had no intention of trying to get any contributions from a corporation. It's not even a corporation. It's a DBA. I don't even think it's a filed DBA. I think he just acts under a business name, La Nueva Salsa de Hoy. Translated, it's the new salsa of today in English. That's just a business name that he puts out there on a sign in front of his business, which he rents, again, I said, under his individual name. The third violation of failing to demonstrate that the spending was in furtherance of the campaign. I'm a little confused as to what the actual factual situation of that is, other than I think we made some extra expenditures when we were getting started. We contracted Verizon to set up phone systems. They came in, performed work. We paid them. We then found a cheaper provider, CompuPhone, to come in, and then we switched over to them. So I'm not sure exactly what that was all about. And the other part of that allegation was with Con Edison. To be honest, I don't understand the actual factual situation of it, that we somehow overpaid some Con Edison bills or something on the account. Other than that, I would just respectfully request that if the board would consider mitigating some of these penalties. We weren't successful in our campaign. That's neither here nor there, but there was never any intent to defraud the board or the taxpayer of the city of New York in any of these transactions or throughout the entire campaign. We try to uphold an honest and forthright campaign for the most part.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ferrante, would you like to respond?
Sure, I'll just take them in order, I guess. So with respect to recommended violation 1, the failure to document, the transaction that Mr. Valdez is referencing is a $500 overpayment to his campaign manager. That Mr. Valdez's explanation does roughly comport to our understanding of the situation. The campaign manager likely provided some services prior to the commencement of his contract, and then the initial payment on the contract was increased by $500 in recognition of that additional work. The fact that we understand that the campaign or performed some services or provided some services to the campaign is why we have not penalized it as a non-campaign related expenditure, but have instead penalized it as a failure to document. And as the candidate has acknowledged, he does not have any invoices or receipts for the expenditure and did not submit an amended contract reflecting the increased payment. So I believe that supports the decision to penalize it as a failure to document. With respect to
Go ahead, Rick.
There's a second basis for this penalty, is there not? Do you want to address that? Because if we were inclined to mitigate or otherwise adjust the penalty because of the $500 payment, what would that leave us with the penalty relating to the joint expenditures for petition?
Just a moment. It would leave you with a penalty of, I believe, $201.
Got it. So the first one was
it's just a $50 penalty. Yeah.
Just a $50. Yeah. Okay, go on, please.
Well, actually,
I'm sorry, Greg. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. Did Mr. Valdez submit at least an email demonstrating an attempt to get this affirmation? So I understand. I mean, there's a problem if the recipient of the email won't respond, but was there an attempt that's documented?
I don't believe we have any such documentation.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on with respect to the corporate contribution violation, Mr. Valdez has referenced that this space, it is a commercial space. The campaign did provide an affidavit from the contributor stating that he's leased it in his own name. We have no supporting documentation for that affidavit. Excuse me. And as the board is aware, a commercial space cannot serve as the venue for a house party. It has to be in an actual individual's residence. Sort of the purpose of a house party is to limit the size and extent of the gathering. Having a house party in a commercial space sort of defeats the whole purpose. And although Mr. Valdez has represented that the corporation or the individual is actually just operating a DBA, it is in fact an incorporated entity. The board would direct attention to Exhibit 7. They'll see that La Nueva Salsa de Hoy is registered in New York State as a corporation. And in response to the statement that in the affidavit that the lease is held in the individual's name personally, I would argue that the fact that the lease is in the owner's individual name rather than the company's is only relevant if we can also establish that he used personal funds to pay for the lease in the space rather than any revenue generated from the operation of a business out of the commercial space, if that makes sense to the board, because the only reason to have the space is to operate the business, which brings in the money to rent the space and so on and so forth. So that's my response to that. Are there any questions with respect to that violation? No? Okay.
Move on to issue 3.
So issue 3 is non-campaign related expenditures. As Mr. Valdez expressed, there's essentially 2 groups of expenditures here. There's overpayments to Con Edison. The campaign had headquarters in 2 different addresses, and over the course of the campaign seems to have paid several bills twice as a result of late payments and other delays, which caused Con Edison to incorporate prior bills and amounts owed into future bills. And then the campaign seems to have lost track of which ones it had previously paid, and then subsequently paid them a second time, resulting in, I believe, a total overpayment of $628.21 to Con Edison. And then there's a similar, although slightly different finding for payments to Verizon. The campaign paid Verizon from between February and August 2017 about $1,500, except during that same time period, they were also paying for a virtual phone service, and the campaign had previously represented that the phone service from Verizon had been replaced by this subsequent service, so it seems that they were paying for duplicative services over the course of the campaign, which is why those are penalized as NCI, or non-campaign related expenditures, excuse me. And the campaign hasn't demonstrated that it received any refunds from Con Edison or anything like that that would offset the payments.
If the campaign has but has not asserted a legitimate claim for a refund from either of these utilities, is that enough to rebut the claim of unrelated expenses, or does it actually have to assert the claim?
How do you mean? The campaign would have to receive the actual refund from Con Edison in order to make this a non-campaign related expenditure, because essentially they've paid for services that they never received.
Got it. Okay. Mr. Valdez, would you like to say anything further?
Yes, if I may. In regards to the last one that we're just discussing right now, Con Edison, correct what Mr. Ferrante had said. I think there was some mix-up with our treasurer and paying Con Ed bills timely, whether there were funds in the account at the time or not, and we might have then paid a bill and then didn't get there in time, so it showed up as a balance on the next bill, and we paid it again. I can't contest the Con Edison charges. As for the allegation of the 391 or penalty for Verizon, I think was pretty clear cut. We contracted Verizon. This was the campaign office in Sunset Park, where they came in, performed work, installing wires and everything. We thought that was the way to go. Verizon is Verizon. When we started the campaign, we shortly progressed. We found out about another vendor that did actually save us money compared to Verizon over the next 6 months. So we switched over to CompuPhone, which was the virtual provider. We paid Verizon for their services that they rendered. Then we switched. I don't see the problem in doing that. So that's regarding to that part. I'm sorry.
Stay with that for a sec. I think the claim is that there was an overlap and there was a period when you were paying, in a sense, for both services. Can you address that?
I don't believe that was the case. I believe that we had Verizon. If there was an overlap, it might have been over one billing cycle where we decided to cancel Verizon. We brought CompuPhone on, but it wasn't like there was an overlap of 2, 3, 4 months. It was when we cut off the services for Verizon, we might have gotten the final bill from Verizon. We paid it. Can I testify to the fact that there was an overlap of a day, a week, a month? I can't. I know for sure that there wasn't an overlap of 2 billing cycles. That's for sure. We canceled the Verizon. We went with CompuPhone.
Okay, I'm sorry I interrupted you. You were about to address Con Ed again.
And then Con Edison, I don't think I could argue anything on that regard. I think we were a bit negligent on staying on top of the bills there at the time, and perhaps we were incorrect in remitting the amount that we paid. And I think there was a small overpayment that was done to Con Edison. Whether that amount was refunded or not, I can't state to this day whether I remember. This is going back a number of years. I can't state whether we got a refund or not. If we did get a refund, it went back into the campaign, and at the end of the day, when we wrapped up the campaign, we refunded whatever we had back to the city of New York.
Thank you. Mr. Ferrante, do you know how long the overlap was with Verizon?
The overlap was from February to August 2017.
Oh, no.
Roughly 6 months.
Couldn't have been.
And is that reflected in the exhibits that we have?
I don't believe you've been provided with the actual bills, but the documentation provided by the campaign, the invoices from Verizon and CompuPhone demonstrate that the Verizon service began in February 2017, and then the CompuPhone service also began in February 2017. The Verizon final bill was from August 2017. The CompuPhone service continued until January 2018.
Right. Okay. Well, sometimes these things do happen. I know I'm a compulsive bill payer, and I sometimes pay bills twice in order to make sure I haven't failed to pay them. But any other questions?
I have nothing further.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Going back to candidate Maliatakis, has anybody arrived since I called this matter before on behalf of this candidate? If not, I think we will now go into deliberations, and we'll come back in a little while and announce our decisions. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we're waiting for the rest of the members to join. Okay, it looks like here we all are. I've got to apologize in advance that I've got a dog in the house and I'm trying to keep him quiet. But if you hear an occasional bark, it's coming from me. And at the moment, there's nothing I can do about it since I'm here alone. But we'll try to get through this. Let's start with Mr. Herbert before we get to the penalties. We've deliberated on Mr. Herbert's petition, and we really are going to need some further time to deliberate on this. And so we are not going to announce a decision today on that petition, and we will deliberate and reach a conclusion as quickly as we can. But it raises really an issue of first impression for us that we really need to consider further. So I apologize for not being able to give a decision, but that's where we are. With respect to the remaining appearances, the board has deliberated, and we propose to make the following findings as to violations and proposed penalties, which we'll vote on as a group at the end of my announcement here. So the first is candidate Carew, and I'm reading off a very fine print, so you'll excuse me if I'm a little bit slow on this. So this is Mr. Carew was a 2017 candidate for City Council District number 41, and the board is proposing to find the following violations with the following penalties. One, failing to provide bank statements, $200. Two, filing a late disclosure statement, violation but no penalty. Three, failing to demonstrate compliance with the reporting requirements for receipts, $250. Four, failing to respond to the draft audit report, $500, for total penalties of $950. Next, Nicole Maliatakis.
Chair, this is Richard Davis. I just want to note that I was recused from this particular matter, not participate in the deliberations over this penalty.
Good, and we will note your abstention when we vote on this. But I'll just say that candidate Maliatakis had been scheduled to appear. No representative appeared, and as a result of email communications back and forth, we've been informed by the campaign that they here and will accept the
Chair, you broke up for
penalties.
30 seconds there.
Correct.
Chair, if you don't mind repeating yourself, Chair
Yeah.
Schaefer.
So it was.
Thank you.
It was at the point, Rick, where you said we informed by email. ...
By the campaign that they waived their right to appear and will accept the penalties, the findings and penalties that the board determines. And so the board proposes to find the following violations and impose the following penalties as one, failing to provide bank statements, $1,000. Two, failing to report transactions, $11,496. Three, failing to demonstrate compliance with cash receipts reporting and documentation requirements, $657. Four, failing to report and late reporting of transactions in daily pre-election disclosure statements, $450. Five, failing to document transactions, $305. Six, accepting contributions from corporations, limited liability companies, or partnerships, $6,064. Seven, accepting contributions from unregistered political committees, $500. 8, failing to demonstrate compliance with intermediary reporting and documentation requirements, $800. 9, making cash expenditures greater than $100, $112. 10, failing to demonstrate spending was in furtherance of the campaign, $3,260. 11, making impermissible post-election expenditures, $2,075, for total recommended penalties of $26,719. Now, in addition, there are further public funds payments due to the campaign, which we believe as of now total $15,118, and I can't read the cents, but hang on one second. Because I have to make a statement about this. I don't think there's any sense. I think it's just $15,118. And with respect to that, the approval will be conditioned on the following. The board approves a post-election payment of that amount, which is limited to documented outstanding liabilities less the campaign's current bank balance. If the campaign demonstrates that its bank balance has been reduced due to bank fees, the board authorizes the staff to adjust the payment proportionately with those fees. All right, so that if that amount remains the same, then we have a net payment of penalties by the Maliatakis campaign of $11,601. Finally, candidate, I should have said at the beginning that the campaign was for mayor in 2017. Finally, we have Delbis Valdez, who was a 2017 candidate for City Council District number 38. The board proposes to make the following findings and impose the following penalties. 1, failing to document transactions, $201. 2, accepting a contribution from a corporation, $250. 3, failing to demonstrate that spending was in furtherance of the campaign, $274, for a total penalties of $700. I will that we approve findings and penalties and repayment amounts. Is there a second?
Chair Schaefer, if you don't mind providing the total again for Valdez.
Yeah, sorry about that. I've got a very bad connection here. The total for Valdez, the total rather, is $725. And so with that, I will move the approval of these findings and penalties and further payment to the Maliatakis campaign. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And I'll note abstention.
That portion
Yeah.
of the motion that related to Maliatakis.
And Mr. Davis abstains as to the Maliatakis. Very good. So the motion carries. And so we are now finished with that portion of the agenda. Let me just move on now, 1 second. And the next item on the agenda, just give me a minute. Yes, so there was a prior general election payment that was approved by me as chair, and we need to bring it to a vote to ratify. Ms. Persky, are you will you summarize that for us?
I can provide the details.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Cho.
For the board to ratify. No.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Good morning again. So for the 2020 general election that occurred, there was a public funds payment issued on October 29th, 2020 to 3 candidates. Ms. Joanne Areola, totaling $127,142. Don Evan Richards, $21,847. Dow Yin, $136,443, and the payment for board staff that was recommended and the Chair Schaefer approved on that date was The total was $285,432, and this payment included the 5% reserve that's held for the final payment before an election.
Is there somebody who would like to make that motion to ratify that payment?
I move that the board ratify the payments authorized by Chair Schaefer as described in the chat.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I guess I abstained since it was my decision. Okay. The motion carries. Next, we have we need to approve some proposed rules for public comment. And Ms. Persky, are you going to tee that one up?
Yes.
Yeah, good. You no longer have the deer in the headlights look, so I guess I got it right this time. Go ahead.
Yes, so hello again, Bethany Persky, Deputy General Counsel. Today, the board will vote on proposed amendments to the board rules regarding candidate and committee registration and certification, committee termination and closure, post-election and post-termination disclosure statement filing requirements, resignation and removal of committee treasurers, records retention, public funds payments and repayments, increases to the expenditure limit and public funds maximum in the event of delayed or postponed elections, and text message disclosure requirements for candidates and independent spenders. These amendments are being made to ease administrative burdens on campaigns by eliminating duplicative filings with the New York State Board of Elections, facilitate the resignation or removal of committee treasurers, enable the board to respond effectively to public health or other emergencies requiring the delay or postponement of elections, clarify the required disclosures within text message communications, and improve the administration and efficiency of the public matching funds program. Pursuant to Section 1043 of the New York City Charter, the proposed rules will be published in the City Record, and after a 30-day public comment period, the board will hold a public hearing for anyone who wishes to testify. The hearing will be held remotely, and the access link will be posted on the board's website. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I move that the board issue those proposed rules for public comment. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have to consider an advisory opinion. And who's going to explain this one?
I can do that as well. Sorry, my camera is having some issues, so I turned it off.
That's okay, fine. Go ahead.
This is Advisory Opinion 2020-3. This is to provide that candidates may establish special election committees beginning when a special election is reasonably anticipated, and may simultaneously maintain an active committee for reasonably anticipated special election and an active committee for the subsequent primary and general elections, provided that expenditures made by both committees prior to the special election are presumed to be for the special election unless the candidate demonstrates otherwise. This also provides that the out-year expenditure limit, which limits expenditures made in the 3 years preceding the year of a covered election, is applied to a candidate's next election, regardless of whether that election is a special election.
All right, any discussion? If not, I'll move the adoption of that advisory opinion. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion carries. Finally, I will move that we go into executive session and to adjourn immediately from the executive session as we have no other public business for today's meeting. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. We will go into executive session and adjourn. Thank you all for participating in this public meeting.